This is an AI-free podcast. Everything you read, see, and hear was created by a human.
There's an old saying, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Not a bigger bunch of bullshit than I've ever heard. Starting an art-based business. Mm-hmm. So most of the time, people come around or they'll ask. It's like, and you might be an artist of whatever. You might be a photographer, maybe an illustrator, or maybe you want to be most of the time I get stuff related to comics. But I mean, it's true for anything. Musicians, because we run a music venue here, that want to make money from their artwork. And they want to know how to do it. And the question that they're really asking, that they're not really getting to, is how do I turn my art into a business? And what are the things I need to think about, look at? And so just speaking in very broad terms, I'm going to use the term art, and it could be anything. Mm-hmm. You are a writer, somebody else, like I said, illustrator. Whatever it might be. You've been doing a thing for a while, and now you want to monetize it. That's what it comes down to, right? Mm-hmm. And if it's possible, then you want to monetize it like a lot.
Oh, yeah, I think that's the dream.
The first thing you need to do is think about this from a very practical aspect. Are you looking to have like a side hustle? Or are you looking to have like a going concern? Or are you looking to start a side hustle and build that into an ongoing business? Mm-hmm. What is your objective? Mm-hmm. Like everybody says, well, I want to live comfortably off my art. But what does that mean? Are you willing to lower your standard of living so that you could live comfortably off what your art is making, assuming you're making anything at all?
I think that the strategy that definitely I used and that a lot of people are using when they start out is like, I'm going to make my art and maybe it'll catch. Maybe it'll grow into something.
Right.
Is that a fake expectation?
No, it's not. It's not at all. It's not an expectation. Mm-hmm. It's a desire, right? It's like, I'm going to do this thing and hopefully someday people will appreciate it enough to pay me for it. And then once they start paying me for it, that they're going to appreciate it enough to pay me more for it. Or I'll have a lot of people who are willing to give me money for my thing, or I'll have notoriety, or whatever it might be. You need to have an objective. Having a side hustle, I think, is a natural progression for someone who is doing whatever it is they might do. And now they've developed a body of work that's big enough to maybe generate some revenue. So you're an illustrator and you've been doing whatever it is that you've been doing, or you're a painter, you're painting, or you're a writer, or you've been making books, and now you've got 2 or 3 of them or whatever, and you want to put them out. And the side hustle is a natural desire. It's like, mm-hmm. I've invested enough of my time, and to a lesser extent money, to get myself to where I am mm-hmm. right now. So saying that you want to make a few bucks off your work, mm-hmm. Turning your drawings into T-shirts or selling prints or whatever it might be. Very natural. The harder part is moving it up. Part of what you're going to have to figure out on your own is, am I doing something that's scalable? Can I produce more of whatever it is that I'm trying to sell? So if you're an illustrator and you're selling posters and you have 6 designs and they're doing okay, you're just going to have to be able to add more, but that means you have to do more work. So if you've been drawing or painting in your side time, in your mm-hmm. off time, and it took you like a couple of years to get those 6 paintings to get you to low-end side hustle, mm-hmm. you need to add more. This is just a basic business proposition. You need to add more to your catalog mm-hmm. in order for it to generate more revenue, mm-hmm. because the people are going to expect to see something. Now, if it took you 2 years to do 6 paintings, how long is it going to take you to do 6 more? Mm-hmm. What can you do in the interim? So you could try If you're selling a print and then you're selling a shirt, then you can say, oh, I'll put this on a pint glass, or I'll put this on here and there. And then you run the risk of oversaturating people with just the same drawing over and over again.
And is there a formula for finding?
There's no formula. Yeah. There's no formula ever. Oh, I think that what I mentioned before, or if I didn't, none of this is an exact science, because if it were, you could duplicate it like all the time and everyone would be successful. Or people would make the same mistake all the time and no one would be successful. But it's not an exact science, because some people can get away with things and some people can't. Mm-hmm. And that's just it, because art is whatever you can get away with, as we all know.
On scalability, 2 questions. Was SLG, was that a side hustle when you started that you scaled?
Yes.
And also, okay, thank you for the answer. In the previous episode, we talked about how you scaled too big and then you became, you fell over because of how big you scaled.
Yeah.
Sort of. You scaled more than you could operationally handle, and you attribute that to kind of a point of breakdown.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So what are the warning signs that you've scaled too big? How do you know when to stop?
Stop trying to scale, you mean?
Should you always keep trying to scale?
Yeah, you always have to. If you're running a business, you always have to try to add more, because that's just kind of what a business requires, right? A word that rhymes with scale is stale. If you're not adding to that pile, then people just don't keep coming back. They'll keep coming back. You'll still start acquiring, whether it might be new readers or new fans or whatever it might be. But if you recorded one album, if you're a musician, and it sold pretty well 10 years ago, and you never did another piece of music, that piece of music that you did that sold really well will just eventually just kind of fall off the cliff.
In most cases, yeah.
Yeah, because there's nothing new to push it. There's nothing new to people who are expecting you to do something else. Just don't even know to look anymore, don't care. Mm-hmm. And it's new people aren't going to find you because they're being constantly shown the new thing. So you have to be able to continually add something, or else your business will stagnate. Your art might not stagnate, but you have to kind of separate the two ideas.
What about the fear of jumping the shark?
I mean, that's an artistic thing. It's not a business thing.
Oh, okay. So what's good for business may not always be good for art.
Correct.
And we're talking about business today. We're talking about the business of art, not the art of business.
Right. So the thing about it is that that scalability, and you mentioned my own experience, scalability doesn't have to solely consist of what you do. Mm-hmm. So if you know someone else who's also an illustrator and you've had some success selling, you might try selling their prints for them. Mm-hmm. That makes you money, allows you to scale your business without having to produce necessarily more yourself.
Okay.
That's a different aspect of it. But you have to decide, again, once you start doing that, now you're a business person, you're not being an artist anymore. You have to decide whether this is really important to you. Is your business doing really well? Are you able to live comfortably, pay whatever bill comes your way, and then also take care of the person that you're bringing in whose other art you're going to sell, and represent them well. This is all the shit you need to do if you're going to run a business.
And this is all the shit you do.
Because just because you're an artist doesn't change the idea that you are in business, right? Once you start trying to make money, you will start acquiring bills that you need to pay. So you're going to sell your art from a website. You got to pay for that website. You maybe don't do, as in my own case, you don't do web design that well. You're going to have to pay a designer. You're going to have to pay for a credit card processor. There's a whole list of things. And you go, well, what about the art? Yeah, what about it? Doesn't matter, because you're in business. And in business, you got to take care of it. There's an old saying, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Not a bigger bunch of bullshit than I've ever heard. Because if you do what you love, you're going to work 1,000 times harder. The idea that, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life makes it sound like, I'm going to be so happy because doing all, what they're not saying is you're going to work, you got a shit ton of things to do. If you're doing this, if you're running a business and somehow that thing isn't bringing you joy on its own, then all of that work is for nothing. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have to work 1,000 times harder, especially if you're in an art related business, because art is subjective, and no one is less subjective about their art than the artist.
So are you saying you should do what you love, but you're still going to work?
I'm not saying you should do what you love. I tried consulting for a little while, and people would bring me their things as, oh, help me look at this, and I want to sell this, right? I never successfully consulted with anyone because I would look at their stuff and say, don't do this. Don't. It's just not viable at all on any level. And if they walked away from that, yeah, you're going to fail. Because they were going to fail because if that was enough to discourage them, and then none of those people that came to me and showed me that stuff and said, how can we put this out there, ever did anything with it. Oh. You know, and maybe I completely discouraged them, and that was wrong. And maybe I could have been more positive, but I felt I was being honest.
Right.
And it's that their solution to their problem was go to someone who's done it and pay them to do it for you. But if I had taken on those projects and they failed, financially speaking, if they failed, I'd feel responsible. And then they would blame me. Mm-hmm. Like I said, not an exact science. So deciding what your thing is going to be, whether it's going to be a side hustle or you're trying to develop it into a big business, or you're just happy to, for a minimal amount of investment, make your work available to the public. And you don't have to worry about running a business. You can just take whatever comes and there it goes, mm-hmm. right? The problem then becomes when you want to move that up. You have to research the industry that you're going to be a part of. So you're an author, mm-hmm. right? You wrote a book. Do you want to see your book in a bookstore? What does that take?
Right.
Right? You walk into, most people don't understand, and we're just talking about books. You walk into a Barnes & Noble or some other bookstore and you look around and you see tables and shelves full of books. Mm-hmm. Every single one of those books is returnable. Bookstores do not make money with back inventory. It's they will order 100 of something and they sell 3, they send the other 97 back.
And then the author gets charged.
And the author gets charged, not just the 97 copies, but you get charged a return fee, mm-hmm. which is somewhere between...
It's the cost of printing and the cost of delivery.
Yeah. So if you're working with a distributor, they'll often just write it down as a chargeback. It's the 7% return fee or 10% or whatever it might be. 7 to 10% seems to be about right. 10% of your sales, of your returns, are going to be tacked on mm-hmm. for the cost of processing the returns. And depending on the format of the book, they may not even be actually returning the book because mm-hmm. they have what's called affidavit returns. That's a cost of doing business. That's the way that business works. And you say, well, why can't bookstores get away with that? Because their margin's predetermined. You go in and you see $12.95 on the back of a book, and that's what the publisher has decided that book needs to sell for. And that is what the bookstore is committed to selling it for. They've mm-hmm. paid roughly 50% of that cover price as a wholesale price. Mm-hmm. So their markup is finite. It's not like you're selling T-shirts, right? Mm-hmm. This shirt cost me $6 to print, and I'm going to charge $25 for it. Because there's no price on the shirt, you can charge whatever you want. Mm-hmm. But a bookstore, their margin is built into the cover price of the book.
When you break it down, it seems like books are a really bad way to make money.
Books are a terrible way to make money.
Why do people write them? Why did I write one?
Because you wanted to write. Because you wanted to write, and so you did. I wanted to publish comics, and I did. And it's not like you can't make money, but then again, that goes back to the subject of scale, mm-hmm. right? If you have comics, especially comic books, not necessarily graphic novels, but comic books, they're what you would call a high volume, low margin business. Mm-hmm. Because you can't really charge that much for them. And the comic shop's the same thing. You put the cover price of a comic on the comic. That's what they're going to sell it for. Mm-hmm. Now, the comic shops, it's we'll just mark this book is selling really well. I'm going to charge $10 for it instead of $3.50. But they're dealing with the fact that their margins are in that particular thing, their margins are set in stone and they're small. Mm-hmm. You know how are you going to pay, if you're in Silicon Valley and you're paying $5 a square foot for retail space, and that might even be somewhat conservative of an estimate. How are you going to make that selling a $3 comic book as your main price thing? It's why prices go up, not just because the publisher needs more or the paper costs more, but the retailer needs more too, because they pay more every year for everything, and that's just the way it goes, right? And, there are margins built in, so you need to understand the industry you're going to sell into. And again, you may be better off side hustling it and not bothering everybody else, but that's what you need to kind of understand going forward. Whatever the industry might be, you need to know the mechanics of how the money is made.
Okay.
Because business is about making money, right? And people get involved in businesses all the time because they love people. I opened my first comic shop because I love comics. And we spoke before, if it weren't for comic books, I wouldn't be able to read. But I mean, as running a business goes, you will be blinded, especially if you run a comic book store. You will eat top ramen without water to keep your bit, because you can't afford a microwave to stay in that business. You will throw dollars around to make nickels.
But I think a lot of people have tried to avoid the headache of the retail game by starting Patreons or something like that, by trying to get loyal people to pay upfront to fund the art. Right.
Number one thing that once you start thinking about this and you start thinking about the mechanics and all this other stuff and whether it's going to be a side hustle or you're going to scale it up or whatever, and all of it requires money, right? Do not use your own money ever if you can avoid it. Like, some people have managed to succeed by doing things that you shouldn't do, like mortgage your home or anything like that. But in the case of things like Patreon or Kickstarter or crowdfunding being available, that's something that didn't exist even 10 years ago, really. And had it when I was in 2008, 2009, we'd probably be looking at a different way of doing business. Kickstarter is a marketplace on its own at this point, right? Especially for comics. People are looking at Kickstarters who like non-Marvel and DC and indie comic stuff. They're looking there as almost a primary source. I stock the store from Kickstarter now. I buy stuff that people put up on Kickstarter and I put in our store because I know people aren't going to see it because it's a very curated thing there. We're not carrying a bunch of stuff.
So you're a fan of people who go through Kickstarter to get there.
It's a great thing because you can go out there and it's a great way of judging the commercial viability of your project and your ability to run a business. Because just because you put something on Kickstarter doesn't mean it's going to fund. And so, like, if you didn't put the work in, you aren't going to get any pledges, right? And if you don't put the work in, no one's going to know about it. And if you didn't put the work in, no one's going to see it. It's just not an automatic thing. You got to put the work in. And if you put in the work and then you make your number, and you have to be realistic about what that number is going to be, then you've now successfully judged not only the viability of your project, but your ability to run on a very small level a business, because you just did. And you didn't spend your own money. I mean, you spent money. Maybe you're going to have to spend your own money at some point just to get something started, like produce samples, produce a video, things like that. But even if you did, whatever money that you spent, you got to fold that back into the money that you're asking for through crowdfunding. And we have a Patreon here because it's just unbelievably expensive to keep this place open. Right. And
you have a successful Patreon. By a lot of people's standards, I would call that a hugely successful Patreon.
It's some money, an amount of money that I look forward to every month. But anyway, don't use your own money. There are famous instances of people who successfully use their own money to start something they believed in. It's altogether possible. It's just not a good idea.
By your standards, I fucked up when I was making my book. I cracked open my savings. I was like, this is the book that the world needs. I'm going to make this money back. I did. I was lucky, I think. But I don't know. I don't think I could take another project like that financially.
Well, I think where you messed up, and you could have just made your book through Ingram Spark.
I could have.
For a lot less. So here's the thing, and we come up to my third thing, and this addresses exactly that, is setting goals for yourself. Achievable goals. Small, mini steps, whatever they might be. So if your goal was simply to have that book, you got that book. So you set your goal, you made your goal. The second step, of course, would be selling it, and which is how we met, is you're going around like, please sell this for me. But again, you did so without researching your industry. When I asked you if there was a wholesale price, I'm pretty sure that was the first time you'd even heard that term.
No, I knew the term. I just wasn't prepared. I hadn't thought. I just cut the price in half.
But you should have known that going in. So set an achievable goal for yourself. And that goal might simply be the existence of the product and its availability. Forgetting for a minute that you went and printed 100 copies. The book looked great, but yeah, ultimately it was probably not the smartest thing you could have done.
I could have used this checklist like when I was starting this whole thing out.
Well, now you have it. Yeah, setting an achievable goal and then seeing where you are once you reach it. This doesn't really speak to the idea of running a business, but you have to know whether you have a business before you really start trying to push it.
How can you know that?
You know that because people are buying your stuff. So your achievable goal was the existence of the book. And now the book exists and it's available on a platform where people can buy books, which I'm talking about Amazon or barnesandnoble.com or all those places, because Ingram Spark will put you there. In terms of like addressing the notion of scalability, if you were trying to really get your stuff out there, you wouldn't want Ingram Spark to be your distributor, because they are just like putting something there and maybe charging you some money for promotional tools, but you don't really get the access that you need to places that you can sell, like, for instance, libraries. But yeah, knowing your business and where you want to go with it. If you're a photographer and you want to sell prints of your pictures, then the natural thing is to go onto Etsy. Because that's where people are looking for that.
Right.
That doesn't mean you should be not looking at other marketplaces to sell it in. Amazon's a tough nut to crack. It took me literally 18 months to get them to let me list T-shirts, and it's because they have a very decided thing about how apparel should be sold. And I think it works for them, that they have a vision for what their catalog should look like.
Do you use the warehouse to store your T-shirts, or do you send them out yourself?
We send them out ourselves. So if you want to just do Amazon merch, you can do that too. But understand, the Amazon merch is flooded now with AI-generated stuff.
Right.
And I'm not going to. This is not the point of this discussion to put a value judgment on that, because it's just a thing. But now you have people on the internet who are doing print-on-demand channels that have tens of thousands of subscribers, and they're basically telling you, and this is 100% right, the more SKUs you have, the more product, the more money you're going to make. And you have AI tools that can generate hundreds of designs in a minute, and then you just need to like clean them up or change them a little bit or whatever. And there are tools that will allow you to upload thousands of designs a day to Amazon, and there are people that do. That's part of research. Understand if your marketplace is really saturated. So you go to Etsy and you're going to do your research, and you're just like seascapes, landscape photography, whatever you're going to use as your search term. And look at all the number of people who are selling that stuff, and then look at their rankings. And there are tools you can use. There's a tool that's called eRank that only costs like $6 or $7 a month, and it's worth getting in there for using it for a couple of months if you're going to do something like that. If you're going to sell on Etsy, this is an Etsy tool where you can put in a product and see where it ranks in terms of selling and how many it might have sold. They have their own way of calculating if something is selling or not. And you're like, oh, okay, well, look at that. Well, it's like you have to understand that, well, now I'm competing against these people and I got to get myself seen, so I'm going to have to pay for Etsy ads. That's like more off my bottom line. And unfortunately, like when they're charging you a percentage and you pop up the price of your product, then so does their percentage go up. So anyways, going back to setting achievable goals and researching your industry and how the two are kind of, one goes, all this stuff goes hand in hand with the other. If you are going to use something like Printify, like you might want to just sell your prints yourself. You have the ultimate control over what they are, but then it's like, oh, this might look good on a coffee mug, or it might look good on a shirt, but I don't have the ability to produce shirts myself, or it might look good on a note card, or it might look good on any product, whatever it might be. Then you just go down there and see all the stuff that they go, and you can take one image and then put it on 50 different things. And, maybe if you're going to pay for the professional level that they have, it's going to cost you like $30 a month, but you'll make that back, but you just need to have a lot of product.
And you've personally scaled enough that it was worthwhile for you to lease your own t-shirt printer versus going to Printify, right?
Yeah. The big difference is that, again, it was part of the research portion of it, right? Because we were at the time doing a lot of screen printing to support the shirt stuff that was just for our comics. And you always run up against a case where screen printers, they don't want to talk to you unless you're doing like 100 shirts or something like that. And so you run out of the most popular size, which is usually men's medium. But you have plenty of larges and extra larges and stuff like that. So it's like, do I go back and just do 100 men's medium? Or, what am I going to do? And there's a lot of waste. The sales stagnate on something and you're left with a lot of printed shirts, and that goes into your bottom line. I mean, that's kind of the math of it all. It's the research of it all. It's like if you were doing a shirt and it cost you like end of day $7 plopped in your lap each, and you did 100 of them, and you're like, oh, okay, and you said the retail price is going to be $25. You're making $18 a shirt, right? You only sell 10 shirts. You've got $600 worth of cost. You didn't make anything because you've got $600 invested in inventory you can't sell. So being able to do our own print on demand here allowed me to expand the number of designs that we were doing and expand beyond designs that were comic related and try to build another segment of the business that could be sustainable on its own.
And you made that decision purely based off of you hit the number where it made more sense to do it in-house than out-of-house.
Right, because I couldn't scale. There was no way to use I was either going to have to buy the printer that we have, which is a digital printer, or I was going to have to invest in screen printing equipment and become my own screen printer. The problem with both is that you then become a printer, right? You've diverged to a certain extent, and it's like very true for us. It's like when we got the direct-to-garment printer, when I realized like if this thing's not printing every day because it's water-based ink, the ink has a chance of gumming up the heads because they'll start to dry up.
So you have to print every day?
You have to print every day.
What are you printing every day?
Well, even sometimes you just go and do a head clean every day.
Oh, interesting.
But that wastes ink.
Okay.
And then you got to do it, It's all stuff you need to consider. This is all part of it.
Yeah, and this is all research. This is all know what you're doing before you do it.
Right.
Or at least try to know.
Because you're always going to run across things you don't know.
Yeah.
And you're always going to run into unforeseen things. That's why they're unforeseen.
Did you go in blind, or have you always had this mentality?
I'm stupid. I went in blind. I'm talking here from experience of messing up and managing to get through and be able to live through my mistakes. You're always going to try and live a mistake-free life, but there are going to be times you guess wrong. Again, scaling up, doing other people's comics, right? Hey, this comic sold good. That one is kind of like it. So the same audience will buy it. That's not always true. Matter of fact, it's probably not true more often than it is true. And you have to not look into things. In my case, it's like, you have to develop a little bit keener of a vision for like, okay, this sold because, maybe it appealed to people in its own way and it was good. Again, that's why I settled on the sincere effort. So sincerity, and it's hard to sell that, but I mean, you're going to make mistakes. That's why you don't use your own money. Because you fuck up, I Patreon the shit out of this, and I fucked up. My patrons will be upset.
Your advice to not use your own money, that sounds like really nice in theory and not always practical, right?
Right.
Because anybody starting in art is going to have to make their own investment. Like, people who aren't investing in their own artistic journey are the ones who aren't moving anywhere.
Well, but I know, and you're going to have to spend some of your own money to get started. But what I'm saying is, like, when you're going to do that big run of books or the big run of comics, or you're going to go out and you're going to launch this Etsy site, you're going to have to print your stuff and you're going to have to invest in material and stuff like that. Some of it has got to be your own, but if you're going to take that big step, get the money to move it from another place, either crowdfunding or, God forbid, you don't really want to take out a loan on an art-based business.
Right.
Because people who loan you money, their money is made on you paying them back. Mm-hmm. And if you fuck up and you fail, then you're still going to owe them that money, or you end up going bankrupt. And that can be lethal. So that brings us into the next thing. It's having a clear vision of success.
Yes.
Right? Have a clear vision for both success and failure, and then have a clear vision for an exit strategy. Let's say your vision is, and we're starting from a side hustle here aspect, I want to make enough money every month to pay my utility bills. Because then it's like, oh, look at that. My art is keeping me warm. Is that an achievable goal? What are your utility bills?
Yeah.
But that's, again, I have in my mind a clear vision for success, clear vision for failure, and an exit strategy.
Exit strategy. Tell me more about that.
So know if maybe your exit strategy might be, I'm going to build this into something successful, and then I'm going to sell it. That would be just a business thing.
So you don't recommend saying I'm going to do this forever.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm saying like maybe at some point you don't want to run your business anymore, but then you also don't want to like not have that revenue anymore. So you might have an idea that I'm going to outsource this entire thing to someone else.
So what I'm hearing is envision your success to such a detailed degree that you are sick of your success.
Or envision your failure to such a graphic degree that you know that I'm pulling the plug on this now.
So set your parameters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never heard that piece of advice before.
Yeah, well, it's important. I mean, you need to know. You need to get to that point and kind of know how you're going to get out of things.
Yeah.
So I'm speaking now to all the people who've ever come up to me and talked about starting a business, and it's like, oh, I'm in the process of getting an LLC. You will be told by any number of people that you need to have an LLC because LLC stands for Limited Liability Corporation. Because you want to limit your liabilities. You want to insulate yourself from whatever might happen.
Yeah, I've heard that advice for people saying that's going to lower your tax burden or something.
No, it doesn't. It actually will increase it. And here's where I'm going to talk to you about the LLC, at least in the state of California. This is something that you need to know, just in general about all the permits and things like that. But you start an LLC in the state of California, and you're doing it when they refer to it as being pre-revenue. So and that means that you've just started your business. You're not making any money yet. You're still in that research portion of your life. You're still figuring all this other stuff out. And you decided, okay, I am going to start an LLC because I did the research and there's all these companies that tell me all the advantages of having an LLC. And again, I'm speaking about the state of California. So you need to look into what the laws are in your state. It is true that limited liability corporations, LLC, S-corps, whatever you want to do, they insulate you to a certain degree, but they don't always. Because most times if you go and apply for a loan as an LLC, you're going to have to personally guarantee that loan anyways. So it's not an invitation to go bankrupt and then not be personally liable. It doesn't save your house. The second thing about it, and this is very important in the arts business, you applied for an LLC in the state of California, you now are going to have to pay the state of California $800 a year at minimum. The LLC taxes are not based on net profit. They're based on gross sales. You have to pay that whether you are making $1 in sales or not.
If you're making,
this applies to any kind of business whatsoever. You decided you're starting an LLC, you're a fucking handyman, and you've decided you're going to have an LLC, whatever you are, you have to pay $800 a year minimum, because the LLC tax in the state of California is based on gross sales and not on net profit. So you are better off starting your business DBA under your name, doing business as.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it if you're like I said, pre-revenue, you're just making a few $100 a month or whatever, and you're just trying to scale up. Do the DBA thing. You can apply for a fictitious name, and then you can do business as whatever you want it. Along with that, it's a small amount to pay, and so that's just a sticking point with me. And I can't tell how many times people come in here and they've talked about their plans. It's like, oh, we're in the process of finalizing our LLC. And I go, oh, shit, well, you're just doomed.
Are you an LLC right now?
Yes.
Art Boutique is an LLC?
Yes.
Or SLG Art Boutique is one LLC?
Art Boutique Entertainment is the LLC, and everything is a brand operated by that.
SLG is a brand underneath that?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But SLG came first.
Yes.
So you can rearrange those things?
You can. There's a lot of things that you need to consider. So there's another thing. If you are running a home-based business, a lot of people think like, oh, business licenses, this shit doesn't apply to me because I'm an artist. Mm-hmm. If you are operating a business of any sort, you are going to be required to apply for and pay for a business license tax. And I remembered when this started happening, and people were saying like the city of San Jose was like trying to hit up people with babysitting businesses, saying you need a business license. If you're a graphic designer and you're working at home and you have an ongoing business of doing graphic design, you need to have a business license. You need to have a resale permit so you can collect sales tax. Key on that word for a second. You're collecting sales tax. Like a lot of people say, oh, do you charge, they come here at Art Boutique or come up to you at a convention, do you charge tax? And I used to correct people, I go, I collect tax. I am an uncompensated tax collector for the state of California. Mm-hmm. You are required to do that. When we were putting on this convention called APE, the Alternative Press Expo, when we got back into it, I was taken aback at the amount of work I had to do as the convention organizer to get everyone to either give me a resale license number or make them apply for a temporary seller's permit, because they were required to collect sales tax on the sales made in California, and this is true everywhere. So that's really a big deal as you start growing your thing. Now, if you stick to just selling through marketplaces,
like
Amazon, they collect and then they pay.
But I still need to pay income tax.
You do need to pay income tax.
Okay. So all of the people who just pop up at little craft fairs are in violation of this?
No, they're not, because they're required to get a temporary seller's permit or have a resale license. So anyone that's going to all these craft fairs probably has a resale permit, because the state doesn't even want you to sell exhibit space to someone who's not going to collect sales tax.
Okay.
And I guarantee you, if you know anybody that's doing a ton of crafts fairs, they either have their own permit or they're trying to sneak by using somebody else's permit or something like that. But they're putting a permit number down on that. This is a real hassle, because sales tax, you just see it as a number, right? In the state, the state sales tax is 7 something, right? And then there are the county has its own add-on, the city has its own add-on that might expire, and then the sales tax rate overall might go down. You're making a face. I know. This is a headache. This is why you got to look at this stuff and decide whether you want to do it. Because just because you're an artist, it's not absolving you from that responsibility to collect and pay taxes. These are all things that you need to look at. What are your local requirements for running a business? And don't think for half a fucking second that because you're an author, or you're an artist, or you're a graphic designer, that you're somehow exempt from the rules that the rest of us have to follow. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't.
So that really sucks.
And it does suck. I mean, if you're small and you stay small and you just can get by with all of that type of stuff here to a degree, but once you start making, and the money is not that much, just in terms of what I have to report to the IRS. So a band comes here to play at Art Boutique, and they make a couple $100. But if they come 2 or 3 times a year, and once they make over $600, I need to issue them a 1099, and you are required to report to the IRS that this was income that you made.
Right.
Right? And like Venmo is going to start sending you a 1099.
I get that, yeah.
Yeah. And all of that is stuff that you have to say, oh, this is income. And then you got to start doing that paperwork. The nice thing about it is that if they are asking you to do that, you're a DBA already. You can go through, and first thing you can do is like say, well, I have a home office. Yeah. And it's going to cost me whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's going to cost.
And I start writing off airfare and,
and whatever. Things that are relevant, traditionally relatively real. Yeah. You got to be able to show it. Yeah. But then all of a sudden you got like, oh, my business lost money. and then that, like, you have a regular job, you're a yoga teacher, that loss that you have, you take off against the other income.
That's nice.
You don't want to lose it. You can't. So here's the problem.
Yeah.
And this is why you might want to have an LLC. Because if you're just DBAing it as a thing, and you're an artist, and you're reporting loss after loss after loss after loss, the IRS can audit you and say, you know what, this is no longer a business. This is a hobby. And you don't get to do this anymore. It's not as simple as, I mean, it can be as simple as I'm going to put my stuff on Etsy and not worry about it anymore, right? Or wherever. You're going to just use some print-on-demand thing, but it all becomes an issue of how I'm going to scale this. Is it a business? Is it just a side hustle? I would say stick with the side hustle for a bit and then decide if it's a business, Stuff to think about.
Okay.
It's hard.
This has been terrible. Thank you.
Yeah.